The sun glared down on the school courtyard, reflecting off polished chrome and glittering paint. Engines roared, sneakers squeaked, and laughter filled the air. In the middle of the crowd stood a boy draped in wealth, designer jacket, gold chain catching the light, and beside him, his pride and joy, a gleaming racing bike that cost more than most families earned in a year. He smirked, his friends echoing his arrogance, waiting for the next moment to display his power. And then, from the far side of the courtyard, came the sound of something different. A slow, rusty creak, the groan of tire pedals, and there he was, the janitor. His skin darkened by years of labor, his clothes faded, and pushing alongside it was an old bicycle, chipped paint, bent frame, a relic of another time. The rich teen's eyes lit up with cruelty. "What is that?" he shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you pull that out of the trash? Or is the trash taking you for a ride?" Laughter exploded, sharp and merciless. Students pointed, mocking the old man and his bicycle. But the janitor didn't answer. He only tightened his grip on the handlebars, his gaze steady, calm, unshaken by the storm of ridicule. The crowd roared with laughter, but the voiceover whispered softly, chilling the air. He thought it was just an old bicycle. What he didn't know was that this rusted frame carried a truth powerful enough to bring him to his knees. He was a kind of boy who had never heard the word no. His father's fortune paved every road before him, and his last name carried more weight than his own actions ever could. Teachers looked the other way, classmates envied his style, and wherever he went, he carried an aura of untouchable privilege. His sneakers were always new, his gadgets always the latest, and his arrogance always louder than the voices around him. To him, life was a stage, and everyone else was the audience, clapping or laughing on his command. He relished the laughter, especially when it was at someone else's expense. Nothing gave him more satisfaction than proving his superiority, mocking anyone who didn't meet his impossible standards of wealth. And then there was a janitor, a man who walked through the same halls every day, broom in one hand, silent strength in the other. His uniform was faded, shoes worn, and his bicycle, old, scratched, dented, was a target of endless ridicule. He spoke little, worked tirelessly, and carried himself with a dignity that few noticed, but none could strip away. On that day, the clash between these two worlds became inevitable. The boy leaned against his glossy racing bike, grinning wide as the janitor wheeled in his rusted companion. "Look at that museum piece." The teen sneered, pointing so the crowd wouldn't miss a moment. His friends laughed louder, their voices bouncing off the walls, their amusement feeding his ego. The janitor paused, eyes meeting the boys for the briefest second. There was no anger, no shame, only a quiet patience, as though he had weathered storms far greater than this childish mockery. But silence in a crowd can sometimes sting worse than words, and the boy mistook it for weakness. "Tell me," he mocked again, stepping closer so the crowd could see his dominance. "How many miles before that thing falls apart? Or do you keep it around to remind everyone you'll never afford the real thing?" The laughter rose, cruel and merciless, echoing through the courtyard like a cruel chorus. Some students joined in, others stayed quiet, but none spoke against him. For the boy, this was victory, another performance, another round of applause. But behind the janitor's silence was a story, a truth heavier than gold, stronger than arrogance, a truth the boy was not ready to face. That evening, the courtyard scene replayed itself in whispers and laughter. Wherever the boy went, he heard the echoes of his own voice mocking the janitor, and he fed on it like fuel. To him, it was proof of his dominance, another day where he proved the world belonged to him. He rode his shining bike faster than ever, the tires humming against the asphalt, the wind cutting through his hair. People turned their heads to watch, but not in admiration, only because the noise demanded attention. But arrogance is a way of blinding the eyes. In his rush to display power, he missed the small details, the loose chain, the gravel scattered across the road, the sharp curve that came too quickly. His laughter cut short, replaced by the screech of metal and the brutal silence of fall. His perfect bike lay twisted on the ground, and so did he, scraped, shaken, humiliated. A group of classmates saw it happen. Instead of helping, they laughed, their phones out, capturing the sight of the invincible boy sprawled on the pavement. "So much for the champion." One jeered, "Guess money can't buy balance." Their laughter echoed the very cruelty he had once aimed at others, and this time he was a target. He forced himself up, his pride bleeding more than his wounds. Anger burned in his chest, but underneath it was something far worse. Fear. For the first time, he felt what it meant to be powerless, to have no one stand by his side. That night, he sat in his room. The broken pieces of his bike leaned against the wall like a shattered crown. His reflection in the mirror looked smaller, weaker, stripped of the arrogance he wore so easily. He clenched his fists, his eyes wet, but not from pain. He wasn't crying because he fell. He wasn't crying because the bike broke. He was crying because no one cared enough to help him back up. And in that hollow silence, a thought struck him like lightning. Was this how the janitor had felt, standing alone in the courtyard while laughter rained down on him? For the first time, the boy's arrogance cracked, and through it seeped the sting of truth. The next morning, the boy dragged himself to school, his pride wrapped in bandages as much as his knees and elbows. His bike, once polished and perfect, sat bent and broken in the corner of his garage, useless and silent. Without it, he felt invisible. For the first time, his steps were heavy, his chin lower, his laughter gone. As he walked through the hallway, he saw him, the janitor, quietly sweeping, his old bicycle leaning gently against the wall like it had for years. Its chipped paint caught the light, its bent wheel wobbling slightly, but it still stood, steady and whole in a way his own broken bike never could. The boy hesitated, anger and curiosity pulling at him in equal measure. For a long moment, he just stared. Then, almost against his own will, he muttered, "Why do you even keep that piece of junk? You could buy a new one." The janitor didn't stop sweeping. His voice was low, steady, carrying a weight the boy didn't expect. Because some things cannot be replaced. The boy frowned, unsettled. It's just a bicycle. Finally, the janitor looked up, his eyes calm but filled with something deeper, memories carved in silence. To you, maybe, but to me, it's a story. Every dent, every scratch, it carries a piece of a life lived, a sacrifice made. This bicycle has carried me further than money ever could. The boy fell silent. For the first time, he had no quick insult, no sharp laugh to hide behind. The janitor leaned on his broom, his gaze still steady. You think strength is in what shines, what others clap for. But strength, his hand brushed the bicycle's handle, rough with age, is in what keeps moving forward, even when the world laughs at it. The boy shifted uncomfortably. The words slipped into him like water finding cracks in stone. He didn't want to admit it, but something inside him stirred, a realization that he had never considered before. The janitor gave a small smile, almost imperceptible, before returning to his work. The conversation ended as quietly as it began, but its echo lingered in the boy's chest. As he walked away, the boy glanced back at that old bicycle once more. For the first time, he didn't see rust or weakness. He saw resilience. And somewhere deep inside, a question took root. Had he been laughing at the man, or at his own ignorance? The boy could not sleep that night. The janitor's words echoed in his head like a quiet drumbeat he couldn't silence. Strength is in what keeps moving forward, even when the world laughs at it. He tossed and turned, staring at the broken pieces of his expensive bicycle lying in the corner. For the first time, the shiny frame looked empty, meaningless, a hollow prize that had never taught him anything except pride. The next day at school, he watched from a distance as the janitor wheeled his old bicycle across the courtyard. The same bent frame, the same chipped paint, the same uneven pedal strokes. But now, instead of laughter, the boy saw something else, determination. The janitor wasn't fast, but he kept going. He wasn't strong in appearance, but there was strength in his persistence, in the way he never seemed ashamed. The boy's friends didn't notice. They still laughed, still jeered, but he remained quiet. Their jokes rang differently in his ears now, hollow and cruel. For the first time, he wondered if he had always been just like them, loud, shallow, blind. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the boy began to change. At first, it was small. He stayed back after class once, quietly watching the janitor fix a squeaky door hinge with calm patience. Another time, he saw him help a younger student pick up books without asking for thanks. These little moments dug into the boy's heart, showing him a kind of strength money couldn't buy. One afternoon, unable to resist his curiosity, the boy walked up again. "Why don't you just throw it away?" he asked, pointing at the bicycle. The janitor looked up with a faint smile. "Because this bicycle carried me to every job I ever worked, every meal I ever earned, every day I managed to keep going when I had nothing else. It carried me through poverty, through storms, through nights when my children were hungry. It's old, but it's still standing, just like me." The boy swallowed hard, words caught in his throat. He had never thought of objects carrying stories. To him, value was measured by price tags. But here stood a man whose most precious possession wasn't worth $1 in the marketplace, yet carried the weight of an entire life. That evening, the boy wheeled his broken racing bike out of the garage. For hours, he struggled to fix it himself. Grease on his hands, sweat on his forehead, frustration in his chest. It was messy, difficult, and far slower than just calling a repair shop. But for the first time, he wanted to try. He wanted to learn what it meant to endure. When the chain finally clicked back into place, he didn't feel powerful. He felt something new, something quieter, heavier, more meaningful. He felt respect. And though he didn't admit it out loud, he knew it was a janitor's old bicycle that had begun to teach him what his wealth never could. The following week, the school announced a big event, a cycling competition open to everyone. It was meant to be a showcase of speed, skill, and talent. For the rich teen, it was an opportunity to flaunt his shiny new racing bike, to dominate again, and to prove that nothing and no one could surpass him. He strutted around, boasting loudly to his friends, the gleam of arrogance in his eyes brighter than the polished metal of his tires. But something had shifted inside him. The memories of the janitor, his quiet dignity, and the truth carried by that old bicycle weighed on him. Every time he laughed at someone else's mistakes, he remembered the janitor's steady hands, the way he moved forward even when the world mocked him. A knot of unease formed in his chest. Was victory worth the cruelty he had once wielded? Meanwhile, the janitor stood quietly by the edge of the track with his old bicycle, watching his students prepared. No one expected him to compete. Everyone assumed he was there only to clean, to watch, to remain in the background. But the boy who had once mocked him knew better now. He understood that real strength often hid in plain sight, unnoticed by those too busy laughing to see. The day of the competition arrived. The crowd gathered, excited, whispering about who would win. Cameras flashed, parents cheered, and the rich teen revved his bike, confident that victory was already his. He laughed at the idea of anyone challenging him. The boy, hesitant at first, wheeled his broken bike to the starting line. Every step felt heavy, every eye on him a reminder of past humiliation. His friends gasped. The rich teen laughed louder than ever. "You? Compete? With that thing?" The janitor stood silently at the sidelines, his eyes calm but expectant. He gave no instructions, no encouragement, only presence, a quiet reminder of what perseverance truly meant. The starting whistle blew. The rich teen shot forward, tires spinning, adrenaline pumping. The boy followed, legs shaking, heart pounding, sweat dripping. Each pedal stroke was a test of endurance, of determination, of the lessons he had learned over the past weeks. And as the race progressed, something remarkable happened. The crowd, expecting disaster, began to notice the boy's focus, his steady rhythm, his unwavering determination. The arrogance of the rich teen began to falter as he realized his opponent was not just struggling to keep up. He was learning, adapting, and growing stronger with every turn. The final lap approached. Silence fell over the spectators. The boy, riding with every ounce of strength, approached the finish line, the janitor's quiet wisdom echoing in his mind. Strength is in what keeps moving forward, even when the world laughs at it. The rich teen's laughter faded. For the first time, he felt uncertainty. And as the boy crossed the finish line, something inside him cracked. The final stretch of the track was like a battlefield. The rich teen's face was twisted in disbelief, his hands gripping the handlebars tighter than ever. He had always believed that speed, money, and arrogance could conquer anything. But now, something he had never expected was happening. The boy who once stumbled, who had laughed at the janitor's bicycle, was surging forward with a strength that could not be bought or mocked. Every pedal stroke carried lessons learned. Every movement echoed the quiet wisdom of the janitor. Every breath reminded him of nights spent questioning his own arrogance. The crowd leaned forward, their laughter now gone, replaced by stunned silence. They watched as the boy navigated the course with precision, his focus unbroken, his determination visible in every muscle. The rich teen pushed harder, desperate to maintain his lead. Pride and humiliation collided inside him, a storm he had never known. The more he pushed, the more he realized that speed alone would not win this race. Not against someone who had endured, learned, and transformed in ways he had never imagined. And then it happened. A sharp curve approached. The rich teen miscalculated, tires skidding on loose gravel. For a split second, his heart stopped. He realized that victory was slipping through his fingers, and for the first time, he understood the weight of arrogance, the fragility of assuming superiority. The boy crossed the curve smoothly, his old, dented bicycle carrying him steadily, resilient as ever. The crowd erupted, not in mockery, but in awe. Gasps, cheers, and applause filled the air. He was ahead now, not because of flashy equipment or wealth, but because of patience, endurance, and quiet determination. The final meters approached. The rich teen's face went pale. He leaned forward, desperate, but the lesson was already clear. The boy who had been mocked, humiliated, and underestimated was about to claim what the world had denied him for so long. Every cheer, every eye on him, every gasp from the audience reinforced the truth he had ignored. Strength is not inherited, it is earned. And then, the finish line came. The boy crossed it first, his chest heaving, sweat mixing with pride and relief. The old janitor, standing at the sidelines, nodded approvingly, his quiet smile saying everything the boy had already felt. The rich teen's knees buckled, his pride shattering in the dust. He stared at the boy, disbelief and shame mixing in his eyes. For the first time, he felt the sting of humility, the weight of judgment, and the realization that mocking others can never build true strength. The crowd stood, applause thunderous, voices unified in celebration of courage, persistence, and integrity. Students who had laughed at the boy now cheered for him. The laughter of arrogance had been replaced by respect, admiration, and awe. The boy raised his hand slightly, not in arrogance, but in quiet acknowledgement of the journey, the struggles, the guidance, and the lessons learned. The rich teen collapsed to the ground, defeated not by skill alone, but by the truth that had always been stronger than his wealth, faster than his bike, and mightier than his ego. And the old bicycle, battered, bent, and worn, stood as a symbol of endurance, resilience, and the quiet power of those who never give up. The courtyard was alive with applause, a sound so loud it seemed to shake the walls and the hearts of those who had once laughed. The boy stood tall, breathing heavily, sweat and triumph mingling on his face. He was no longer the one who stumbled, mocked, and underestimated. He was a victor, not because of money or flashy bikes, but because of patience, resilience, and quiet determination. The rich teen sat on the ground, his face pale and eyes wide. He had never known the weight of true humility, the sting of being proven wrong by someone he had underestimated. For the first time, he understood that arrogance could not carry him through life, and that mocking others only revealed his own weakness. The janitor approached, his step slow but steady, and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. There was no boast, no celebration, only pride and quiet acknowledgement. The old bicycle, bent and scratched, seemed almost aglow in the sunlight, a testament to endurance, courage, and the lessons it had silently carried for years. The rich teen's laughter, once cruel and sharp, was gone. He looked at the janitor, then at the boy, his chest tightening with a mixture of guilt, shame, and awe. The truth had knocked him down harder than any fall or failure ever could. The crowd, once spectators of arrogance, now rose to their feet. Students and onlookers who had cheered at ridicule now clapped for bravery, resilience, and integrity. The courtyard was no longer a stage for cruelty. It was a hall of respect. The boy gave a small, humble nod, not in triumph over anyone, but in acknowledgement of the journey he had taken. The janitor smiled faintly, eyes filled with quiet pride. And the rich teen, sitting in the dust of his arrogance, realized that true strength was never measured by wealth, by speed, or by laughter. It was measured by endurance, by courage, and by the heart to rise again. As the voiceover whispered, soft but powerful, "If this story touched your heart, share it, Because sometimes the simplest things carry the greatest truths, and the quietest voices can teach the loudest lessons.